Welcome back. I'm Ruth Ann, and this is For Those Who Care, a podcast dedicated to caregiving. Thanks so much for being here, Jenna, and thanks for helping get us to season 2.
I can't believe that we're having another season, that we have been doing it this long, and it flew by. And I can't believe how much we've both learned and the conversations we've been able to have. It's been incredible. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. It's been pretty amazing.
The topic for today is a little bit more somber. We're going to be talking about grief, and this is the first episode in a 2-part series. And Jenna, you have walked through grief with me since Lance died, and actually even before Lance died, because I was dealing with anticipatory grief. And doing this podcast has been such a big part of my healing process. Can you start off by sharing what it was like in the beginning when we met? Because we met 3 years before Lance passed away, and I was dealing with anticipatory grief then. So I'd really like to hear your thoughts on walking through that time of grief with me.
It was interesting. We met at a really interesting time in my own life, where I was dealing with a lot of things that were overwhelming personally and going through a lot of changes. And I didn't necessarily feel equipped to engage in anyone's life on a very personal level. I was just too overwhelmed with everything I had going on. And so when I first met you, and we've talked about this and we joke about it, it's funny. Um, you were kind of prickly. And I think I was at a point in my life where I didn't take that personally. And in thinking about this episode and having this conversation, one of the things that kept coming up in my mind is, I don't think I would have been prepared to be a support in your life had I met you earlier in my own life, because I don't think I was equipped to walk through grief with anyone, um, in a way that would be supportive. I don't know that I would, I hadn't encountered it earlier on in my life. So I can't say with absolute certainty that I would have failed that assignment. But I do think that the things that led me up to, um, when you and I met, prepared me, or shaped me into a person that was able to be supportive. And when I first met you, I mean, you were a client, and it was not a personal relationship, other than that I really did internalize, the responsibility with everyone that I worked with, even if I only worked with them once or twice as a personal trainer, or worked with them ongoing for months, or some people even years. I really internalized that I had, an opportunity and responsibility to be a positive force in their life. So in whatever capacity they would allow that, I really took that seriously, that it was my responsibility to contribute positively to their overall well-being. And so you were no different. Um, but you were had such a tough exterior, and like, it was clear that you were protective of yourself, you were protective of Lance, you were protective of your life. And I think I didn't take any of that personally, although I did I've told you, I thought, "Oh my god, she really hates me." But, even though I know you didn't, I think you putting up that immediate boundary showed me exactly where I could be, not where I should be, but where I could be, where I was allowed to be. And, I just took that for what it was. And as you opened up, you were very clear with those boundaries, and I wasn't offended by them. So I think that being able to be in a space where I wasn't offended by your boundaries, I didn't take it personally. I wasn't hurt by it. I wasn't, you know, off put by it. For me, it was actually probably beneficial because I was at a point in my life where I also had to put up boundaries. And so I think we had, even though the beginning of the relationship was kind of transactional, I think it was honest. And so we were able to kind of start off on a really good footing where it was like, I'm going to be honest, this is as far as I'll go. And you were saying, I'm going to be honest, this is as far as I'll let you go. And so it was very easy to navigate. Maybe easy isn't the right word. It was very clear how we could navigate from that point. Um, but I also didn't come in with any preconceived expectations or ideas about who you were, what you were. Again, that's something that I think has developed in me over time as I've grown and experienced and matured and met people and listened and learned and hurt people and helped people and been hurt and been helped. You know, it's like you learn that everybody has a story. And hey, I'm just here to watch and observe and ask questions and let you share that story. So I think when I first met you, the thing that allowed us to continue into a relationship was that we were both really honest about boundaries and expectations. And if I could say that anything would help someone either grieving or walking through someone or with someone through their grief, it would be honesty.
Honesty is so important, and I'm glad that you brought that up. And we've also talked in the past about you're not always meant to be in somebody's life. And I think that this just turned out to be one of those times where we were meant to be in each other's lives. And I'm so glad that I met you when I did. Um, you were there for the last 3 years of Lance's life, like I've said, became a bigger part of our life, brought your family in, and your family still plays a role in my life. And I'm just really, really grateful that you stuck around through my prickly years.
Something I want to add to the idea of not m- being meant to be in someone's life. I was thinking about that when we were talking, well, when I was reading, you know, kind of your thoughts or ideas for this episode. And I was thinking about the dynamic where you're in someone's life and you know them well, right? Maybe they're a family member, maybe they're a good friend, and they go through something that produces grief, some kind of loss. And then you have to show up for them in a different way than you did previously because now they're experiencing something different. And it made me think about the idea that, and you and I had the benefit of not knowing each other prior to this. So we could navigate a relationship without a lot of prior knowledge of one another and maybe baggage that comes from that, or maybe memories that come from that. Um, One of the things that has struck me just in my observations, and perhaps you've had a different experience in this, but people will say often that grief changes someone. And I would respectfully disagree with that. I believe that things like that, like grief, they reveal a person. And I wouldn't say that someone lacking a support system or someone lacking resources might not get beat down pretty heavily by a situation like that. But my experience has been that when someone goes through a traumatic experience or even a really positive experience, a life change of, you know, significant magnitude, it reveals them at their core. And so it can bring things to the surface that were maybe always there that are unexpected because they were easy to dismiss when they could stay hidden. And it made me think about, you know, if you are walking with a loved one through that um, process, be aware. of, are those things that you could handle about them? Were they things that are there things about them that you've had to dismiss and that were hard on your relationship prior to this large life change that produced grief, whatever it is? And if so, are you the person to walk through their grief with them? Because it might reveal those things in a way that was easy to maybe cover, navigate, or ignore prior to that. And so I was thinking about that, just the people that I've known over the years. And some people were strong and tenacious and maybe honest to a fault, right? Like all these things before they experienced that. And it brought those things out. And they, you would see them be stronger through it. And some people were not. They were dishonest and manipulative and angry and bitter. And then grief came along and it was like this monster emerged. And it wasn't the grief. I mean, the grief was the catalyst, but those traits, those qualities, like you could look back and see where they existed prior to that. Oh, well, she's always been a strong person. Oh, well, she's always been kind of an angry person. Like, does that make sense? And then, so then it's like when you're in that person's life and you see that they're going through this, maybe you can handle all of them in their, unveiled and unobstructed and unbridled, the fullness of who they are, right? Um, I think it's just important to think through that as you are presented with an opportunity to support someone to varying degrees in their grief.
That's a really good point, and while you were talking about that, I was really thinking about my own grief journey and how it feels like what grief did to me is it kinda stripped me down bare to almost I feel like I've started over, but really, as I'm rebuilding, I can see the parts of myself that were there before I met Lance and before he got sick, and those parts of me that maybe I had forgotten about, because in my life caring for him, what was most important was that we just survive. And so I was doing everything in survival mode. Wow, that's really, really interesting. Now I'm gonna have to journal about that. Love it. I love it. So after Lance died, um, a lot of that is really foggy to me still. I get little glimpses of it because I was in a very deep state of shock after he died, and I wasn't driving. I was barely driving, I should say. Sometimes I couldn't even drive out of my neighborhood. It was so bad. And there were a lot of things that you did to support me through that. And it was during COVID too. People were still hiding out from COVID. This was in 2020 and through the first half of 2021. And you would go driving with me. I remember one time we went out and I had to pull over and get out and let you finish driving because I just started panicking. There was another time I was just getting rid of things and I needed help. I just needed somebody to come and take some of these things away. And you came over and did that. And actually, you have Lance's plant, Hank, who sits behind you on the wall. And I love that. I love that when we record, I get to see Hank because Hank was a member of our family for 25 years. He was a plant that Lance got from one of his shipmates when he had his first surgery. And Hank went through a lot with us. So thank you for caring for Hank. Um, One thing that really stands out to me was the day that I was moving. I had packed up my house. I already had an offer on it. I was moving halfway across the country. I had hired movers to come and load up the moving truck for me, and my brothers flew in and were going to drive the truck halfway across country for me, drive me because I wasn't able to drive. And all that I had left to pack was all of my personal belongings that were in my closet, which was inside the master bathroom. And every time I stepped inside that master bathroom, I started to panic. And I just kept going outside and laying on the ground. I couldn't do it. I could not get through it. And I called you and I asked you for help. And you and your husband came over and you just took all of my things and you packed them all up for me. And you were just there. You stepped up when I needed you, and you did it so many times. I'm just curious what it was like for you navigating that with me.
So thinking about recording this and going back and thinking through that process and remembering, I want to say, first of all, as I've gotten older, and I would say prior to meeting you, I got really good at um, kind of protecting myself from relationships that I didn't feel like I could do justice to. And I would encounter people and, maybe we would hit it off or whatever, and you find something in common and you think, oh, let's go to lunch or let's talk or you text or whatever. And I would encounter different women, and I was very good at putting up boundaries and just saying, like, I don't have any space in my life. And it's not that I don't like you. And it's not that I don't think we would have a lot of fun together and we could become friends and all these things. I knew I had to guard the space in my life. Um, and so I walked very slow into a relationship with you because, not least of all, I realized your husband was dying. And it occurred to me, do can I do this? Do I have space for this? Like, my life is already kind of running on a shoestring. My time, my energy, and I'm not going to step into something that I can't see through, because clearly this woman has a lot going on, and the last thing she needs is someone that will come in, act as though they're going to be a support system, and then go, oh, just kidding, never mind, I can't handle that, and leave. Like, that's loss, and I'm not going to do that to this woman. So I don't know if you remember me being standoffish, but um, I wasn't super engaging at first, and I wasn't blowing anyone off. I just was very, very, very careful, and I would only engage to the extent that I thought I could sustain that relationship. Um, so I knew what you were facing going forward. And so I had to kind of factor that in. Can I do this? Can I be there for this woman when her husband dies? This is going to happen, and I will likely be around when that happens. And can I do this? And I realized that I didn't have to be everything to you, and that I could be a peripheral support. I didn't have to be the on the phone every day, call me at any hour of the day, every minute. I couldn't do that. I was raising kids, I was supporting them. I knew I could do a little. And so I committed myself to being there a little. Like, I can be there a little. And I knew I could sustain that. And so I remember, I don't know if it was the day after Lance died or a couple of days after Lance died. It was very, very soon. It might have been a handful of days after I came over to your house and just sat with you. I think it was less than a week. I do know that. And you were still in shock, but you didn't just like sit there and stare, right? You were chatty and you were talkative, and you were telling me about everything that had happened, and you probably didn't know this at the time, but I think, you repeated several stories, like, over and over, because I think your brain was just in a protective mode, and it knew the stories it could tell, and so I was like, "Oh, yeah," and I would listen to them again, but you behaved as someone who was like, "Well, I did that, and everything's gonna be okay, and I'm gonna move on." And I knew enough. I had been through just enough experiences with people's loss to know, like, yeah, this is this is gonna hit you. And I remember coming home and telling my husband, I was like, she's like numb right now, and I don't know when it's gonna hit, but it's gonna hit, and I'm nervous. I don't know if I can do this. Like, I'm nervous for that to, like, to come around, and I don't know if I can. I'm gonna cry. I didn't know if I could be what you needed when that came around, because I knew that, I mean, I knew, again, I could do a little, but I didn't know if I could do what I assumed would be required. Um, and it was after that, we did the driving thing, and that you moved, and you would call me and say, I'm gonna move. I just decided yesterday I'm gonna move. I know I shouldn't, but I'm gonna move. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna tell you that's a bad idea because it ain't my life. But I'm probably not gonna be like, oh my God, that's so cool. Yeah, I think that's the best idea in the world. I'm just gonna say, oh wow, okay. Well, let me know how I can help with that. Let me know how I can support you. And, if you change your mind, that's cool. And if you move, that's cool. Whatever it is, I'm just here to support you. And I think carrying no expectation with how that grief was going to be. And again, setting that boundary for myself to know, like, okay, I am going to choose to be here. Here's how much I know I can be. And then kind of weighing that every single step. Like, okay, how much can I be now? And how much can I be now? And it's being honest, because walking with someone through their grief is not an all or nothing. It isn't, because their grief is not going to be the same. Like, yours was not the same from day to day. It was not the same from month to month. And I think just deciding, here's what I know I can do, helped me to be available when you did need me. But it was tough. It was tough watching you, like, and this was just my perception, thinking that you were okay one moment and knowing that you weren't, and just like waiting for that to hit you, and then watching it hit you, and then just being there. And I wonder sometimes if, when people have a loved one that enters grief and they get into that space where they're like, I'm fine, everything's great, I don't know what you call that in the grief cycle, but or in the because I think it cycles over and over and over again, right? When they get to that point where they are certain that everything's fine and they've got it figured out, and everything's good and they're good and life is good. As I think, as a supporter or a loved one, you could be like, oh, phew, all right, we got that done. And then when that next wave comes and takes that person out, you're like, what the hell? Like, you said you were fine. And what, now you're calling me again? I thought we were past this. I thought you were over it. And so, like I said, I had been around just enough to know that you're you're not okay.
I would say that is just part of the shock. The shock, I journaled about that, I don't know, probably a couple of years after Lance died, how that shock just protects you. And that's exactly what it was. I would have that feeling that I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. And then, like you said, everything would just fall apart again. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? I'm not okay. Oh my gosh, how am I going to manage this?
is there a name for it? Is it just shock? Is that what it is? Or is it a defined part of the grief process? Because it seems to like reemerge multiple times.
I don't know that I've actually read a specific term. I've read a lot about people going through the grief process, and it's not linear. It is such a
Mhm.
roller coaster ride, and to me, from my experience, it just feels like that's when that's just the shock part of it. It just protects you.
And my observation is that, and I haven't spent that much time with that many people that have gone through that process, but I do pay attention and I do watch people, even peripherally. I'll be kind of around someone and I'll watch them go through, whatever their personal, situations. And so I just observe because I find people fascinating to begin with. But also, like, it helps me learn how to approach other people in my life. If I can watch this process, then it gives me more context clues for maybe somebody who I do have a closer relationship with. Um, and it seems like when you say it's not linear, like it's absolutely not linear and it seems cyclical to me. Like when I watch it, it seems like you go through a cycle and then it's like you start it again and you do it again. And the cycles and the points in the cycle get further apart. This has been my observation. They get further apart. So each part of the process gets longer and longer and longer, and they get softer, like they soften and it's not as jarring. Um, but it seems like until like maybe then I watch someone who maybe they're 10, 15, 20 years out from that, then they can just navigate life as a new normal. But in that first, and maybe like this is just my observation, in that first like 5 years, it's just a circle. And like I said, it just gets bigger and kind of softer, but it's like you kind of know that person's going to come back around to that point again. And I wonder if people just carry an expectation that whoever they're supporting, once they've stated, because it's hard. So I guess that's another part of it. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. Like I don't like it. I don't like being uncomfortable and watching someone hurt and feel bad and like you don't want to watch that, right? It's not fun. It's unpleasant. And I'm a fixer, like I'm a doer. So when I have a problem, like I want to work toward a solution. I do not want to wallow. I hate it. I like that is my worst fear is that I would wallow in whatever is going on with me. I want to learn from my mistakes. I want to move forward. I want to grow. I want to mature. I want to learn. So I'm kind of a doer in that sense. So if I'm watching someone who just wants to wallow, it's really hard. And I've learned that about myself that I cannot be a very good support to that person because I'm not very good at sitting with someone that wants to wallow. Like it's like kind of outside of my ability. If I can see a glimmer of hope in someone, a glimmer of hope that they might someday want to move forward or mature or grow or learn or heal or whatever, then I will be a never ending encouragement to that person. Um, and you had that all along. Like from the moment I met you, even though you were prickly, that was part. that was part of the defining, or kind of the one of the factors that played into why I felt like I could be a part of your life, is it's like you did want to grow and learn and mature and improve and all those things. Like you're a doer as well. And so when I knew, and I just knew, I don't know how I knew, I just knew that when Lance died, that you would want to heal, that that would be your desire, is to heal. And so I was like, okay, I can be a part of that. Like I'm a natural cheerleader. I'm a natural encourager. Oh, you just have to have that desire to heal. And however long it takes you, doesn't matter. As long as that is your goal and I can see that you're actively moving toward a better version of you in the future, whatever that is. Like for whatever, whomever, I'll come along in whatever capacity and be an encouragement for that. Um, and I saw that in you. So that was I mean, that was helpful. If I hadn't seen that, I don't know that I would have maintained any kind of relationship with you, because I don't know that I could have been there for you without that desire to heal.
Yeah. And I can say, being on the other side of it, supporting someone in their grief, it is hard to support someone who is just wallowing, because I can't do that either. I can do it for a small amount of time. And then once I realize that that's all they're going to do is wallow, I'm done. I can't, because I have a growth mindset. So do you. And those are really important points that you made. I think that that's going to be so helpful to people. Really be aware of what your limitations are and be honest, set your boundaries, and be there in the way that you can. It doesn't mean that you need to set aside so much of yourself to support somebody. It doesn't take a lot. I can say that I had a lot of people supporting me during that time, but I honestly don't remember the first. There are very little pieces of the first couple of months after Lance died that I even remember. So I'm always surprised when someone tells me a story about that time, because I don't even remember seeing you during that time. So grief is such a strange thing. The way that it protects your brain, the way that it protects your body is just amazing to me. And I've said before, in the beginning, I wasn't sure if I wanted to survive. But every day I was waking up and I thought, well, if I'm going to keep living, then I actually want to live. I don't want to just sit here. So I just kept going. But I know that I've been through a lot. I've changed a lot. It's 5 years since Lance died now. And you've been through some pretty big things with me. You came out to visit me not quite 3 years after he passed away. And then we took a trip to Ireland this year. And I'm really curious how that affected you, because I know that the trip to Ireland, I've talked about that in another episode. That was a big thing for me, because that was a trip that Lance had paid for me to go on. And it was supposed to be my 50th birthday trip that he paid for. So I know that I processed a lot of things, and we talked a little bit while I was there that you were uncomfortable with some of it. I would love for you to share a little bit more about that if you're willing.
I think I knew from the beginning, number one, that it was your trip. And I feel strange saying that, but genuinely that is how I viewed it. Was I was going along with you, but it was your trip. And it became clear to me almost immediately that I was going to see those cycles reemerge. So that was really interesting, because you genuinely would go from super excited, energetic, ready to go do things, to completely shut down. I can't do anything. I don't want to go there. So I was just watching, and then I realized that when you would say, "Well, what do you wanna do?" I needed to have read your signals and figured out what it was you wanted to do and try and steer you toward that because I hadn't seen you that fragile for a while. You would be fine and then not fine. And it was like I could see y- I don't know what your brain was doing or what your body was doing, but I could tell that it was doing something. And I just, okay, I'm here to be a support and a guide at moments. And I could tell there were times when I could see that you were like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I'm lost. Give me some guidance and some direction. And so I knew when you needed me to get in the driver's seat for a minute. And as soon as you would come back out of that, it was you were like, nope, I'm back in the driver's seat now. I know what I'm doing again. And so I had seen that cycle. I was completely unexpected on that trip. Had no idea that's what was gonna happen. But because my mindset going into it was that it was your trip, it was like, well, this is how we're gonna do it, and this is okay. Like, this is just what it is. And I think, I don't know, like it was so good because there were the spaces where I could have my boundaries to say, no, this is what I need to do right at this moment. And I need to for this to happen. But outside of that, and that was like this much, outside of that, no, we're good. And we can do this however you need to do it or want to do it. And one of the things that was unexpected but kind of funny was were all the times that you would say, okay, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And then you would have to go do something different. And I was okay, we're done. We're done. I'm tired of this. Okay. And you would be stopped and completely engrossed in a moment, taking pictures. And I watched it. And so I didn't know that that's how you would manage your anxiety was getting that camera up to your face or the phone and looking through the lens. Like that was you narrowing your field of vision instead of being overwhelmed by the 360. And so I would watch you get overwhelmed and into that camera you would go and it was like the whole world would stop. And so I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna stop and take pictures. And we would, you would take pictures and as soon as you collected yourself, like you thought you were taking pictures, but I'm watching you, I'm going, no, she's like resetting herself. And as soon as you were reset, okay, I'm done. And you put your phone away, and then you were like walking a million miles an hour. Okay, we're going again. So it was watching your cycles over and over and over again. And, you know, it was interesting. And I am so thankful that I got to be there for that. I don't know how you would have done that by yourself.
I don't know how I would have done that with anyone else. I don't know anyone who has observed me as much as you have, and really sees who I am. You're the only person who's ever picked up on that with my camera. I've known that about myself pretty much my whole life. That's my calm place. When I'm feeling stressed out, I want to take pictures. I have been like that since I was 10 years old and got my first camera. And yeah, that's what I do. I so now everybody will know. And so, I mean, sometimes I really just want to take pictures because I love to take pictures. But when I am in a stressful situation, my camera comes out. You're absolutely right. And I felt that when I was there. I remember we were in the farmers market in Galway, and I remember it happened there. And I was like, I've got to get out of here. But first, I took some pictures.
The
It,
other thing that I remember was that I could tell when you had had enough of, like, n I'm not gonna say new things because everything there was new, but you would get to the end of, like, "I'm done being adventurous, and I now want something familiar that is grounding me," and that showed up in the form of pizza, and I saw that, and I was like, "Oh, that she needs that to kinda, like, get her into a space where she feels back in control." And so, okay, that's fine. Okay. Because I thought, what the, like, why are you so interested in this pizza all of a sudden? And then I was like, oh, that's, she's grounding herself at the pizza place.
Pizza is my absolute favorite food. Um, oh my gosh, that's so funny. And we had pepperoni pizza with hot honey. That was my first time. It was absolutely amazing.
Was so good.
Well, like I said, I am so glad it was you who walked through that with me. I had no idea that Ireland was going to be such a transformative time for me, such a time of healing. And I honestly don't think that anyone else could have handled it, especially as well as you did. So thank you so much for meeting me there and for walking through that time with me.
Well, you are very welcome. And I want you to know that watching you reemerge, like, I hadn't met that part of you. And so watching you reemerge young Ruth Ann um, before your heart was broken, like seeing that, oh, I'm gonna cry. Seeing that heal in real time was an absolute miracle, and it was an honor. And so even if it was hard at moments to navigate, it was worth watching you come around to something new that I had not seen. That was like watching new buds come out on a plant. And it was like, oh my gosh, look at this. Like watching you, this is so silly, but watching you be so hesitant about that bus, and you were so stressed about that bus, and was it going to go out on time? Were we going to get there on time? And then doing it and watching you go, I know exactly what to do, and I know where to go, and I know how to do this. And then watching you just like, it was like you would take off in a sprint as soon as you would get that spark of renewal and new life in you. And it was so fun. It was so fun to watch you reemerge as somebody that I hadn't really met before, because I'd only known you as a caregiver. And so watching this, and I don't know how much of it was new and how much of it was new again, but anyway, it was beautiful. And so for all the parts that were challenging, there were also these amazing parts that were just incredible.
Wow. Well, I have learned so much from you about how to be present for people when they are grieving. And I've walked through grief with a lot of people, but you have taught me so much. And I think one of the most important things that you have given to me is not trying to fix me, just allowing me to be who I need to be where I need to be, and maybe give me a nudge sometimes when you can see that I'm getting stuck, but you always do it in such a loving and caring way. And I would like for every single person in this world going through grief to have a Jenna in their life, because truly I don't know where I would be if you hadn't walked through some of the really tough times of grief with me. So I know that this has been a tough conversation, and I appreciate so much your honesty and your vulnerability in sharing this. And I love that we always go back to the prickly Ruth Ann. That's where it all started. And that you still gave me a chance anyway. Thanks so much for doing this episode with me. We'll continue this conversation on walking through grief in our next episode.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It has been an honor and a privilege to be there. So I'm glad we were able to have this conversation. And like I said, I'm just honored to be alongside you. So thank you.
All right, I'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.